Suprabhatam, good morning, Vandanam, Vanakkam, Namaskar. How do we describe India? So when we speak about India, it's in many flavors, many colors, many cultures. And so the question really is, our title is Reimagining India, Two Perspectives. Let's start with the big question as to why do we need to reimagine India? Are we reimagining India or are we reimagining Bharat? Are we reimagining Bharat as the Bharat that was? Are we reimagining the India that we saw last night at Javed Saab's musical performance, or are we reimagining the India that applauded when India sort of took the wickets of the English cricket team? So let's start by like 5 minutes, Prabhakar, if you can sort of start off saying, why do you think we need to reimagine India?
Thank you very much, Shankar. I'm really honored to be here with Sampath, and thank you very much for the organizers to have given me a chance to be here. Shankar, I'll first of all tell you what I'm not going to discuss. And then I'll tell you what I'm going to discuss and how I would like to go about. I'm not going to make this into a kind of a dogfight between me and Vikram.
No, ideally, Prabhakar, we need a vision from you.
That's one. Yeah. And second thing is, of course, it's also not about what the nation wants to know now, right now, tonight. That we can wait for, till the prime time debates. I think, as you said, this is a very serious question that we need to meditate on, think about it quite seriously. Shankar, I traveled from Hyderabad last night. At the security check, the constable was repeatedly saying, one tray, one bag. That one could put one bag in one tray, that's all. For a second, I was astonished why this constable was making a political statement. One tray, one bag, one nation, one election, one nation, one language, one nation, one leader, one nation, one nation, one. Then I realized it's a very, a transactional thing in an airport. But that is the kind of so-called reimagining India that is happening today. Now, what I discovered, Shankar, is that this kind of a reimagining that we see today, this kind of a reimagined discourse that we see today, is nothing actually a reimagined discourse or reimagined idea of India, but a repurposed idea of India, a repurposed discourse of India, harking back to early 19th century, especially after the British power has consolidated from 1818 onwards, after the comprehensive defeat of the Marathas. From then onwards, if you see, there were a lot of strands. How do we look at India? What is India? Who are Indians? And what kind of a nation are we going to build? And how do we fight the British? How do we fight the colonialism? How do we fight the imperialism? And after we secure independence, how do we build the nation? There were lots of strands. And in the fight, there were several streams: violent, non-violent, pacifist, applicants, supplicants, agitations, etc., etc. But you see, when we look at all those people who fought in their own different ways, in their own different methods, and their own journeys, their own paths, what is the most important thing for us to look at is what could have been the consequences of their different strands, consequences or implications for the polity, for the economy, for the individual, for castes, for religions, for groups, for languages, for regions, etc., etc. Now, if this is the background, then I would say what we see today, the so-called reimagining or the so-called recasting of India and the Indian imagination is a repurposed narrative from those times, that India belongs to certain people. India belongs to people who worship in a certain way. India belongs to people who follow a certain religion. India belongs to people who speak a certain language. India belongs to people who reside in a particular geographical area, etc., etc. As opposed to a narrative or an imagination which is an enlightened imagination, which is in line with the forward movement of history. India belongs to everybody who is here, every citizen, and citizenship is not related to your language or religion or region or anything, but whoever is in India is an Indian. And the liberal, diverse, not just tolerance, but acceptance of differences, of looking at every person, every language, every region as equal owners or equal participants in this long journey of India. This is another. So this reimagining, which is in tune with the modern times, and which doesn't say, look, this last 70 years or 60 years or 50 years have been an aberration. Not an aberration, but a progress. Leaving aside or leaving those practices and those belief systems that were actually unscientific, primitive, misogynistic, etc., etc. And I of course, Vikram knows much better. And now, you see, if you look at it, people who had advocated that this country individually is not the one, but the groups. It could be Varnashrama, it could be Jati, it could be caste, it could be anything, or religion. Are we looking at that kind of an imagination of India? Or are we looking at a citizen and citizen-centric republic, democracy, plurality, liberalism? Are we looking at this? These are the two strands which I think the later one, which I said, should be the way to reimagine India and go forward.
Quite accidentally, Vikram, I am sitting on the left, but that doesn't mean that I am representing the left view. And you are
to my right.
To your right. There is a conception, there is a construct, a kind of hummed narrative, not a spoken narrative, that there is an element of othering that is prevalent, that there are issues. The other aspect, I mean, the flip side of it is that people have been othered for 70 years and they are finding a voice to sort of express themselves. In this, my concern is that are we losing track of the idea of diversity, unity in diversity, what we used to call vividta mein ekta. And all our Sanskrit shlokas are full of inclusion. I mean, you know, I struggle to find a shloka which is exclusive. So is there a reason why people have this conception about the hegemony of homogeneity in the sense of one language? I mean, you know, we can get into the structural aspects of how we need to reimagine India. I'm particularly worried about the North-South question that has popped up. I'm worried when I speak many languages, but I will be forced to oppose if a particular language is imposed on me. And incidentally, all three of us are from South India, so there is some commonality there. But where do you think the debate is located? And in your own writings, I mean, you've written about Gauhar Jahan at one level and written about Savarkar on the other side. I mean, not on the other side literally, but it's a cultural spectrum. Do you think there is an othering of India? Is that charge valid?
Thank you, Shankar. It's a great pleasure to share stage with Dr. Prabhakar, whom I greatly admire for his scholarship, and to be with all of you this morning. As a historian, and I'm very glad Dr. Prabhakar prefaced his opening statements with the fact that we don't want a dogfight. I don't think anyone wants that, as much as the television TRPs would demand such, fights. But as a historian, I would like to say that when one looks back at the past, and today all these debates and discussions are contestations of history, where history has become a live battlefield. A very famous American historian had once said, what people did in the past is not stored in amber. Every generation looks back and drawing from its own experiences makes patterns of the past and the present. So when we are saying we are reimagining Indian past, I don't see it as something that is necessarily bad or something that is necessarily a political project that someone sitting somewhere is sponsoring for a group of hideous people, trying to say, okay, let's change this narrative so that we can get electoral dividends. That may have some element of truth somewhere, but by and large, to rubbish away the entire change that is palpable in Indian society today, to just a political project or something that is linked to an ideology or a political party, I think that would be slightly, missing the point. We just saw what happened during the Pratishthan of the Ram temple in Ayodhya. Of course, the movement was led by the Sangh Parivar in the 90s, which brought the temple movement into public consciousness. But during the consecration ceremony, the Pran Pratishtha, common Indians across the length and breadth of India who had nothing to do with the BJP, RSS, VHP or anything, who were also feeling that this was a day of renaissance and resurgence, where after 500 years of struggle, we've got back one of our most sacred spots. To say that that is just, a very, very bigoted project of some political party, I think you're being totally not in sync with the mood of the people. We need to wake up and smell the coffee, the filter coffee, which is coming straight from the ground. Now, just in the session before ours, Dr. Tharoor and Ms. Braverman spoke about history and about and Dr. Tharoor there, very rightly, also questioned her about the atrocities of the British Empire. But very often, he and his party don't want us to question the atrocities of the invaders prior to the British Empire, the Mughal Empire. They became us, is the normal narrative, which is not so much the case. They were as much oppressors as the British Empire was, in a different manner. It was cultural imperialism of another kind. Now, to even question these or to talk about some of these aspects of our past somehow gets you painted as a communal and a bigoted person, which is, I think, the problem. Dr. Prabhakar mentioned about equal rights to everybody and so on, which the Constitution, enshrined. Very well, no one has a dispute about that. But then 5 years before the Indian Constitution came into force, what was called probably the right-wing, party of those times, the Hindu Mahasabha, which was presided by people like Vinayak Damodar Savarkar and Shama Prasad Mukherjee and others, came out with a draft constitution of free Hindustan. And in that, there is not even one mention of citizenship based on religion. And in this document, which I quote extensively in my book too, they say every citizen of India is equal in the eyes of the law, irrespective of the religion. Religion has nothing to do with the majority community. The Hindus will not get any extra privileges because they are in a majority. And conversely, the minority minorities will not get extra concessions only because they are a minority. In the eyes of the law, everybody is equal. And this was the stated position of the ultra-right party of that time, and a lot of these thoughts actually flowed into the final Indian constitution too. And in the Constituent Assembly debates, several members of the Congress actually acknowledged that the Hindu Mahasabha's views on this were quite egalitarian, and they would be adopting some of these views into it, into the final draft of the constitution. So this fact that, there is one set of people who actually discriminate on the basis of something, I don't know if that is historical enough to actually, on a political side, if the most ultra-right party is actually, giving equal rights to everybody without appeasement of any section, what else is secularism? He also spoke about the caste differences and so on. Now, Hindutva, by its very definition, would actually be anti-caste. If Hindutva is a movement or a political ideology and philosophy to unite Hindus, it would never want them to be divided on the basis of caste. So right from Savarkar to Golwalkar to the Vishwa Hindu Parishad and others, all through their long history, had always advocated for a casteless Hindu society, because you make them en bloc as one unit. That is what helps you. If you splinter them into castes, that is not going to help. And on the contrary, actually, historically speaking, it was someone like Gandhi who in his collected writings say, I very much believe in the Varna system. I very much believe, in which he had a constant running debate with Ambedkar too, where he said, I believe that the Varna system is not odious, and for Hinduism to remain, the Varna system is essential. So who is the right wing here and who is the non-right here? So I think we've got a lot of facts all muddled up for contemporary political rhetoric, which is fine in some way, and for, as Dr. Prabhakar mentioned, the TRPs and dogfights. But if you actually get into the historical facts, I think the fact is somewhere totally different from what we talk about.
So, in some senses, the Hindu way or the Indian way, we all believe in that there are many versions of the truth. And so the debate goes on whether there are many versions of the truth.
Shall I just add to that? I mean, I do understand. I mean, this is always, thrown back, saying ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti and all of that. It's a wonderful virtue to have. But, is everybody signing up to this rule of the club? If you have an opponent who says my way or the highway, this is the only path to God, and anybody who does not subscribe to this, we have the divine sanction to persecute you, to kill you, to convert you, to break your places of worship. And that's a sanction. It's not an 18th century, it's not a 12th century, it's happening as we speak.
No.
It's happening in our neighborhoods. It's happening in the parts of, pre-partitioned India where the percentage of minorities has gone down. So theologically, when we are faced with that, what does the faith which has all these egalitarian principles do? Does it still just keep quoting the scriptures? Or does it also have some amount of organization only for self-defense? Not necessarily for proactive attack on anybody, but you're not even allowed to organize yourself to against any predatory attempts. I think that is, we are the only pagan civilization which is still surviving, and there's something to that.
I'll make a couple of points in the sense that I don't think I'm qualified to defend Mahatma Gandhi, so I will leave him to defend himself in his works about what he said in Varna. Certainly there are many things that one can debate about. But Vikram, the point that I was making is this, that in the Indian system, you have to worry about what is implicit and what is explicit. The explicit actually, if we go back to the founding of the Constitution, I mean, the word secular was not used because the idea was that which is implicit should not be stated explicit. Subsequently, in the 70s, it was stated for whatever reason. So in the same train of thought, there is a feeling that while everything, and I'm just presenting the case as it is being put out by the other side of the narrative, is that while we say that there are no rights have been taken away, there is an equality, that issues are enshrined in the Constitution, the fundamental rights. The point that we often sort of get confronted with when legislation is made, whether the legislation in terms of citizenship, the kind of fog that envelops some of the legislation. Be that as it may, I'm rather skeptical of any political party saying that we are not in a caste race, and that we don't factor caste in our equations, because all electoral maths has an element of demography. But we'll park that here, and I think we should have a longer conversation on what is explicit and implicit. But Prabhakar, this point that Vikram made, which is right. So, I mean, for decades, a particular version of history, and history is written by victors, and so if for 60 years a certain political establishment was a victor, the next establishment which comes in feels it is entitled to write the history. I mean, is this not part of their entitlement? Are you saying that there should be a kind of cutoff on representing history or representing facts? Vikram spoke about the Ram Mandir Pratishthan thing, and a lot of people feel that, and a lot of people, Vikram, also feel that, why will it stop at that, or are we going east and west again on some other projects? So how do you see this, Prabhakar?
Shankar, I'm not going to,
No, it's not a response to...
Yeah, it's not that. But you see, I just want to make two quick points before I come to what you have referred to. Vikram mentioned about Hindu Mahasabha, but Hindu Mahasabha has also referred the Hindu-Muslim question to the League of Nations, decided to refer the Hindu-Muslim question to the League of Nations in 1940. Don't forget that. But you see, there's so many nuances. But the point is this: how do we look at a person residing in India? Do we look at that person as belonging to a particular varna, or a jati, or a caste, or a religion, or a citizen, or a speaker of a particular language? Or do you look at, without any of these qualifications, you look at that person as a citizen? That's one. Now look at, he's also mentioned about Ekam Sat, Bahuda Vipra, Bahuda Vadanti, etc. There are many of these kind of things in our, Sanskrit literature. But the point is this, that the Varnashram Dharma, which directly comes to us from a Purusha Sukta, which says, Brahmano asya mukhamasit bahu rajanya kritaha uru yadasya tad vaisyaha shudra padabhya. Somebody who comes from the pada, somebody who comes from the thigh, somebody who comes from the shoulder, somebody who comes from the mouth. These four are really categories. And, all the strands that he was talking about, they went on saying for a long time, even today, they do not disown these, or they do not disavow of these. They still feel that the Indian democracy, it is recorded, Indian democracy should be based not on individuals, but on groups. That strand was also debated in the Constituent Assembly. And what we have as a document today is after a lot of churning. Now, when you had, especially since Vikram wrote about Savarkar, let's see, just before Savarkar, when he also talks about, what was the socio-cultural milieu around that time. Dogs and pigs were allowed to go into the city of Pune between 9 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, but not untouchables, because at that time the shadow of a person is very long, and even falling of a shadow of an untouchable on a savarna is very polluting. That was the kind of milieu. And do we go back to that kind of a differentiation? It may not look today. But slowly and slowly, this is the value system that is being re-enthroned. This is the value system that is being, glorified. And there is a slow narrative of, no, let me finish it, Vikram. I'm not saying that you are doing it, but there is an atmosphere.
Nobody is. That's a no-brainer.
You can't say that. You can't say that. But you see, these kind of value systems, they have to be seen, and people who are trying to propagate this kind of a value system, they will have to come clean and say, look, this Purusha Sukta has nothing to do with us. This kind of practices which were untouchability, and there are very eminent people who wrote that women's minds are biologically inferior. I can quote that. And there are very revered figures. I do not want to name them now, but they are very revered figures. They said they are on record. And all these things have happened. People were not allowed to get into the schools. So this is the underpinning. This is the value system which is underpinning.
So got your point, Prabhakar. What you're sort of placing is that there are people who come from a particular context.
That's right. And Shankar, that is the kind of reimagining India. This is actually a repurposed reimagining which was already done and dusted.
Okay.
In the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century. As I said, Hindu-Muslim question was decided to be referred to the League of Nations in 1940 by Hindu Mahasabha. So how do we look at that?
Okay, Prabhakar. So, Vikram,
Shankar, I'll just...
Yeah. So, the case that, the way I see it is that there were many reformists within the Mahasabha, within the RSS. Certainly the people that I knew were anti-caste, but there are people... So again, it comes back to the implicit and explicit thing. And, I want to bring it back to contemporary. Do you think that there is a case where these earlier historic contexts are coming back? Are they being imposed? And is this part of the othering story? And, you might want to respond to what Prabhakar said.
See, first of all, I don't know who is getting back to these old straight jackets. I really have no idea. This is a rhetorical, non-fact-based assertion. And if we need to, the Purusha Sukta may have said something, but then no one says that the leg is a bad part of the body. Just cut off your leg and try to see whether you can walk for a few days. So it may have stratified you to different parts of a human anatomy, but where is it implicit there that the leg is something inferior to the head? Without the leg, you can't do a single day's work. Now, if you need to condemn that, will we also condemn those verses of a particular holy book which divides the world into believers and non-believers? No, we don't. We don't. Just quoting reference. Sir, please. No. Yeah, who's preventing? We saw what happened to Nupur Sharma. She just quoted verses of the holy book and we had the whole country go in flames. We had Sar Tan Se Juda happening all over the streets. Condemnation is not enough, but then you, day in and day out, we can go on and also castigate Hindu scriptures, but nobody reacts in such a violent manner. Just yesterday, you had the Deoband coming out with a plan, and Deoband is not some small little organization, saying by 2047, we want the Ghazwa-e-Hind in India. Now, these are real threats. These are real, if you can close your eyes and say these don't exist, and we are living in our make-believe of everyone is the same, but then there are differences which we need to acknowledge. And, your earlier idea that the victors will write history, certainly, history has always been the handmaiden of the victors, but the supporters of this government actually castigated for not writing history enough. We have had HRD ministers of this government who say in the last 10 years we've not changed one single line of, the history textbook, as if it's a matter of...
I don't know, but several parts of history have been taken off the books, Vikram.
No, that is, that's a rationalization. Yeah. We don't have to study only about Delhi. We need to study about other parts of India. So maybe what is taken out, what is added, that's another issue. But then, the whole history project too is something that is happening outside the precincts of the government and the ideological cohorts, which is what I told you right at the start. So to dub everybody who's trying to find that voice again, everybody who's trying to, India was not born in 1950 with the promulgation of the Constitution, which is what the constitutional patriots would want us to believe. I think the civilizational ethos of this nation, which far predates the Constitution, and the Constitution on the converse draws from this ethos. Why else would the Part 3 and the fundamental rights have Rama, Sita, Lakshmana on the fundamental rights? Today, if someone sees that, they'll call that a Sanghi propaganda. The very fact that they were exemplars of virtuosity and someone who are civilizational beacons is something that the founding fathers and mothers of this nation and the Constituent Assembly actually realized.
Fair
but
enough,
to even do that today would be claimed as right-wing, bigoted propaganda, which is unfortunate.
That's a very fair point. In the sense that what was seen at that time is seen differently now. I mean, this is what I said, that there are contextual conceptions and points.
If you just allow me like 2 sentences. Now, for all the so-called, assertion of Hinduism and so on, this is a country where I think Hindus are the only community who don't get to own their temples. It's the government. Where is this a secular nation when the government controls all our temples, whereas no other community in this country, they can run their own institutions, they can run their educational institutions. I come from Karnataka, where just now, there are in the budget, you have 300 crores for the Waqf, you have 200 crores for Christian institutions, and 10% tax for the Hindu temples above 1 crore. And 75% of Delhi is actually Waqf property. So after defense and railways, the largest landowner in India is the Waqf. Well, including Mukesh Ambani's house is on Waqf property. The Delhi High Court is Waqf. The Central Vista is Waqf. And the Waqf Act of 1995 can evict anybody. You can't go to a civil court. You have a Waqf tribunal which will try you. You have a Places of Worship Act which will ensure that you can't get any reclamation, legal, peaceful reclamation.
There's 2 sentences.
That thing is flashing there, so I got to sort of wrap up.
But just allow me maybe 15 sentences. You see, why does the state intervene? Why does the state intervene to say that untouchability is unlawful? State intervenes. You can say, well, it's for us to decide. And Vikram talked about the temples. Shankar, I tell you, in temples, Varnashrama Dharma, the atrocious side of Varnashrama Dharma was in the temples. You see, you had one caste, one which came out with the mouth, could enter the Garbhagriha, and the other one could stand 3 feet away, the other one could stand 7 feet away, the other one could stand 10 feet away, and from the 10 feet onwards, the jatis, the castes, one can stand 12 feet away, another could stand only 15 feet away, 17 feet away, 19 feet away, 21 feet away, and some others could not even come into the temple, not only come into the temple, but also could not walk on the streets leading to the temple. Now, this is the reason why the state had intervened. And the state is the British state.
Not.
Wait a minute. No,
so can the state also intervene to ensure there is no halala, there is no triple talaq, there is a uniform civil code?
It is happening, isn't it?
There is no, and that is called as a bigoted communal agenda.
Why should not? It should
why is there gender empowerment? The Muslim women can be married off at 13.
I wouldn't like to cross-talk, but finish it, you finish it.
Running out of time.
But then why do you cross-talk? See, the point is this. Point is, are we looking at individuals as individuals with equal rights, or are we looking at them as belonging to castes, regions, religions, etc., etc.? This is how we have to look at the way to reimagine. Now, the reimagining that is now going on is only a repurposing of the reimagining or imagining that has happened in the 1880s and 1890s and 1910s and 1940s.
So, as you all can see, that reimagining of India is an ongoing work-in-progress project. And this is a project, I mean, in the 40s, they used to call the Congress the Hindu party. I think now the flip side is playing out. So this is a conversation that we need to have. It is important to have as to how we reimagine India. In my own construct, I would like to reimagine India where the air is free of pollution to breathe, where the children in schools have teachers, where the hospitals have doctors, where people have jobs. But that is a part of the narrative that sort of, as both of them agreed, doesn't often appear on television screens, but needs to appear more. I shall wrap up this. I think this is a conversation everybody needs to have. Thank you very much. Thank you, both of you, for a scholarly discussion.
Well, it's been a feisty debate, and we do hope it carries on off stage. And I think one other thing that we all can agree on is that in whichever way we reimagine India, a constructive and healthy debate will always be part of it, which is exactly what this conversation was. So thank you very much for that, gentlemen. And please do stay on stage as I invite Saurav Yagnik, COO ABP Network, and Rajiv Dubey, Media Head, Dabur India, to please join us on stage and present our esteemed guests with a token of our appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for our brilliant speakers. They've given us a lot to think about. Many thanks again, Dr. Prabhakar and Dr. Sampath. Thank you very much, and thank you to Shankar Iyer for leading that conversation as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we move on, I think you will all agree that one of the most wonderful things about being human is our ability to evolve.